We have a terrific show today. For Will Gerard, I'm Ryan Wilson. Andrew's back in the show, recording for UPT. We have a terrific show, like I said. We have an interview with Will Leitch, founder of Deadspin, contributor to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, about every magazine out there. And we also have an interview with Craig Spence. Craig is the head of communications for the International Paralympic Committee. Not too shabby. We've had quite a busy week here in Rollin Illini.
We have. It seems like we've been all over campus this week. Doesn't it seem that way to you?
Yeah, I mean, we've been all over campus this past couple days, and now, for today's show, we're just going to sit here and listen to interviews just like you guys at home. And so we're probably going to start right off here with Will Leitch's interview. And that'll be a good fun. So we're going to tune right into that after a brief 2-second break here. Be right back for Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. So welcome back to Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. We have now jumped across campus into the student lounge, and we're joined by Will Leitch. How are you, Will?
I'm mirthful. Thank you for having me.
Nice.
I'm full of mirth. The world is a dangerous, sad place, and we're scary every day. It's important to hang on to mirth while we have the opportunity as the bombs rain down upon us at all times.
That was depressing.
I know, sorry, mirth. That's why I did the mirth thing. That's why I did the mirth. Thanks for having me.
Yes. And we walked around the Paralympic training facility here, walked around Gerard, showed you and Will, both Wills here,
Yes.
duo of Wills, the workouts and some of the lifts and exercises they have. What did you think?
I think that I am very physically feeble, and everyone is so much stronger than me. And I knew that going in, but now it's been made vividly aware how it's amazing to it's amazing to feel. We met the head basketball coach, and we got the chance to see what's fun for me is to see. We talked about how there's a mix of old equipment and new equipment, and the idea that there's state of the art stuff, and then just an old school people just killing it on parallel bars. And I think that's great. It's a cool thing to see. We talked a little bit. I wish that there was a little bit more. I kind of took one takeaway for me was I wish DIA maybe was a little bit more involved with this stuff a little bit. I think that would be in their benefit to do so. And I'm sure that would help out the programs. But yeah, it's a really cool thing. It's amazing over here. But again, it's always good to be reminded that I'm wasting my body. I'm wasting what few gifts I was given in the first place. They've all been wasted.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I know it every day. I just get it vividly reminded today.
One question I have for you then is, how familiar are you with the Paralympic movement, and do you think it's something that needs to be covered more in the media?
Yeah, I actually one of my very best friends, her son has SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, which is, I think, for people to know, it's almost like Lou Gehrig disease for babies. It's like the most evil thing in the world, and it's so in the past few years, I've gotten a lot more educated about this myself. It's something that when I was here, I just did not know anything about. It's one of the things that was fun for me to learn here was to learn how long this program's been going on and how I missed it. I saw a section in the 90s there, and I was like, oh, I missed that entirely. So and it's something that I'd say in the last decade has become, I think, as more dopes like me just kind of learning about this stuff, I think it's become a much larger thing because, frankly, I think the thing that's been a major appreciation is just how unbelievably impressive these athletes are. And I think that one thing that I've really liked about kind of the evolution of not just Paralympic sports coverage, but I think all sports coverage, has been appreciation of the artistry of the athlete and the appreciation of the work that goes in. One of the things I always joke about is I always love the ESPN body issue, because it's the one time that an athlete is like, oh yeah, I'm in the gym all the time working on this. Please let me show it off, because someday I'm going to be as old as Leitch, and I'm not going to be able to show this stuff off. And so to be able to see, you get a great appreciation. I think people have generally got a better appreciation of just how much work, how much effort, and really how much ground has been made in the last 20 years. In that time, it's exciting to watch, and it's exciting to see when you've covered that much ground in the last 20 years, what's going to be like in 20 years from now.
You mentioned the ESPN body issue. There have been actually a few Illinois Paralympians featured in there, like Oksana Masters.
Mm-hmm.
She has her legs are missing, and when you see somebody like that kind of focused on the body issue, what kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what, to me, like, it's funny, because one of the things I've found as we've all kind of gotten older, and the conversation about sports and politics and everything has changed, is one of the things I've kind of realized is everything is a political act. And I never really thought about that before. I thought I could just be a regular guy watching a football game, and maybe I'll stand up for the anthem, maybe I'll sit for the anthem, but everything that you do in life is a political act. And so one of the things I love about seeing stuff like that, and seeing, and like, that's just a woman who works like crazy and is able to show off what the fruits of her labors, but also just by doing it, that's a political act. That's an empowering act. This is who I am. I've earned this, and to me, that is something that's been very exciting to see in the culture at large over the last few years. So to see that is, and again, I only read the body issue for the articles. I want to make very clear on that, but it is really a very. It's just an impressive thing across the board, and I think that it's funny, because I think the notion of tossing out creating awareness sometimes can become like a little bit of a platitude, and become like a little bit of a excuse for. I find a lot of like old rich white people saying we're creating awareness for something by drinking a bunch of wine at this fancy mixer tonight, but to me that's true awareness, is to be able to see someone so strong, and even seeing this today, people so strong and so powerful and so justifiably proud of like this thing that they like, their body is like this piece of art, and for me it's just an inspiring thing to see.
And you've been around with the New York Times,
Mm-hmm.
New York Magazine, and a bunch of different other publications. How have you noticed the coverage of people with impairments, disabilities change over time?
Yeah, it's definitely not seen as much of a novelty anymore. Like, it's funny, like 20 years ago, you could like do a story. You might see a story in the New York Times being like, wow, there's people in wheelchairs playing basketball. Good for them. And now it's covered like a sports story. And to me, that is an excellent evolution in this. There's nothing novel about it. Like, there's an understanding of the fierceness of the competition. There's an understanding of how, not only again how much work goes into it, but how, like, I mean, these guys are, men and women are monsters, man. Like, they are, like, there is as fierce and competitive in those events as in any other sport. And I think that's something that would have been just, and frankly, again, I think this goes with a lot of different things in sports coverage, where 20 years ago there was like a novelty, like even like I remember when the WNBA started, and it was like, well, good for them. Good for them. They've got a league. Good for them. And now it's like, did you see the end of that game last night? And like, and you get into the societal issues. And to me, look at the WNBA. There has been they have been on the forefront of the push, and social issues in sports is like a massive discussion right now. The WNBA was ahead of that across the board. That is, it's not interesting on its own that these competitions are fierce now, and that I think is how the coverage has changed. Is there's no notion that this is anything unusual or anything different. It's just competition, and it's an exciting thing to see.
During our tour of Dres, we had a conversation with Butchie, the basketball coach,
Yeah.
and I saw you guys' contact information. Is that is that a story you'd like to pursue then in the
Oh,
future?
yeah, they're hosting nationals here next year, and that sounds like a blast. That sounds, once they figure out where it is, you got to get DIA, they get their act together and help them out.
Really pressure Kim Brown when you see
Oh,
him.
I will be mentioning it. I will be mentioning it. Well, of course, while I'm sipping my wine in the Colonnades Club, I'll be like, so it's time to raise awareness. But no, I think that to me that it was fun. It's fun for me to see not just the competition, but to see how much goes into it. One of the things that he talked about was depending on where they actually have the tournament, if they have to have it somewhere, they want to be able to have it in the right place, because you have to find the thing that I think sports journalists miss a lot of the time, because things are kind of handed to us because we're a little lazy and they just kind of hand stuff to us. You just kind of parachute in. You're like, oh, look at all this stuff that's set up here. This is amazing. Wow, good for you guys. But you don't realize just how much work it goes into that, and how much it's not just about. By the time you get to the tournament, a lot of times the real story is actually already over. Is all the things that have been put together. Guys like Butch are in there, not just coaching. Coaching is only, clearly talking to him, it's only a small part of his job. It's obviously something he cares about deeply, but you gotta it's promotion of the sport. It's preparing for big tournaments like that. It's working with DIA. It's getting respect that the sport deserves and getting the coverage it deserves. So for me, that's a fun thing to I'll put it this way: there are not a lot of places, sports where at the University of Illinois, where I can just come in like I did today and just sit down and he's he don't know me from Adam. I'm just some numbnuts off the street. And to just get to sit and talk with him like that shows not just the accessibility, but shows how it's not just being a coach. You have to promote it in that kind of way. That my little story antenna goes up. For me, that story is not just does Illinois win this tournament that they host. It is, how do you put this together? What are all the hoops he has to jump through? What are the challenges you have to deal with that? What are the things you got to do yourself? How do you get funding? How does all the different ways that he has to try to fight for funding? To me, that's fascinating. And so it must be, and to see then, I'm already imagining the end of the piece. I haven't even interviewed him yet. I'm already imagining the end of the piece. But at the end of the piece, I'm imagining he finally just gets down and finally gets to just freaking coach like he wanted to do in the first place, because that is what is exciting. That's the type of story I see out of something like that. It's not just the games themselves. And listen, it'd be hard for me to be an impartial observer with Illinois hosting nationals anyway, because screw all those other guys. I want Illinois to win. But I will say that that the story to me is that preparation, how much work goes in, not just to run a tournament like that, but to promote it, to get it together, and how little of the job is just flat out coaching.
Yeah, one different thing from wheelchair basketball, for example, is that they don't have the funding that men's basketball does and the DIA, and there's also not the connection with the DIA. So wheelchair basketball is always looking for publicity, and we've actually gone to practice and we've done their workout routines at Memorial Stadium. We've done different things with them. So we're always saying, whatever you want to do, just come with us and tag along. How important do you think would it be for them to merge with the DIA? That way everything kind of runs together and runs with a flow. I mean,
again, I would argue it is absolutely in the DIA's best interest to maybe not maybe not a full merge. I think there'd have to be some sort of process, but I certainly think it's in their best interest to try to do something like that, because I think that not only does it help the DIA. I mean, one of the things that Butch talked about was the idea of the softball team coming and showing how hard they have to, showing them okay, you try doing this training thing, pal, and how hard it's going to be for them. And these are great athletes, so, but also just to, it's funny. One of the things I've seen in sports coverage, particularly at colleges in the last few years, and particularly at football, to be honest, is this notion that the teams have that they don't need the media. The media is not the media is not only they don't need the media is an adversary. The media is something to at Georgia, Kirby Smart didn't give out a depth chart. Jim Harbaugh did the thing where he put a roster of former Michigan players as the roster in the thing. There's this adversarial relationship to the media that I don't think think is necessary, and I think it speaks a little bit to almost, frankly, some of those sports getting a little bit too fat and happy, and a little bit too insulated and isolated from the people that pay their salaries and the people that make all of this happen. And I think, to me, it's one of the things that's really refreshing about this, about talking to Butch and being here, is to see all of the different, this is a passion. This is not, this is a, however you can help out, you can. We're all in this together. And I think once you get to some of those higher level sports, it becomes this us versus them thing that I think does nobody any good. So I think any sort of switch, any sort of merge in that department is nothing but a positive thing. So, but I have to tell you, I'm gonna after a couple drinks tonight. I don't know how much hard alcohol I got off the Colonnades Club, but after a couple drinks tonight, this will be yammered in somebody's ear, particularly if the game goes poorly. If the game goes poorly, then they're not going to be able to shut me up.
Now, as you've covered these professional sports, so what kind of divide have you noticed between journalists and the team, or the coaches, or the players?
It's become more profound since even when I was here. I graduated 20 years ago, and it's so different. The idea of, it used to be the idea that a coach did not let you talk to freshmen. It was radical, what a jerk. Now everybody does that. It's hard to find a coach that lets you talk to freshman players anymore. And at Georgia, Illinois, it's all half the team's freshmen. In Georgia, the starting quarterback's freshman. I have to say, as a fan of the team and that wants to know what's going on, I'd like to hear what these players have to say about this. And I think there has been this kind of sense of that coaches want total control. They want total control over these things. And I think a lot of that has been abated by the increase of money in the sport, and it's allowed them to become more separate from the communities that they live in. And I think also, frankly, the weakening of media a little bit has been a factor in this as well. I think media has, frankly, always been weak, and it gets a little overstated how weak it is now. But certainly the idea that it's frustrating to me. These teams are public trusts. The University of Illinois football team, the Illinois basketball team, the Georgia football team, Georgia basketball team, they've been around a lot longer than Kirby Smart and Lovie Smith or any of these players or the athletic director or the sports information director. They've been around a lot. They'll be along before those people got here and around long after they're gone. Your job when you work for these public trusts is to protect the tradition. And to protect, you're there to protect this thing. And so when you set yourself apart from that by saying, we don't give interviews to freshmen and we don't give depth charts and we don't do that, I think what it does is it separates you, it isolates you, and frankly, it doesn't give you protection when things go wrong. And I think that, you saw, I think when coaches have just generally speaking, when coaches are more connected to the community and more open to the media, it tends to buy them time if things struggle, to be honest. I think Mark Richt at Georgia was always a good example of this. He struggled a little bit, but everybody loved him, and it bought him time. And I think there's been a Sabanization of college athletics a little bit, where there is an idea just the cult of the coach. That guy gets total control, and if he doesn't want you to talk to the media, you don't do it. It's always seemed so strange to me. I'm sorry, I've worked in parts of journalism that are not sports. You can't tell me who I can and can't talk to. I'll call the numbers in the student directory. I'll call his ass right now. And it's very strange to me to see the amount of power that these coaches have tried to put over media, when the fact is, media, you don't need permission to talk to people. Now, sure, you might have to fight with the sports information director about press passes, but the idea is, if true journalism is going to get done, I don't care if you tell me I can't talk to this guy. I will go to his dorm and knock on the freaking door, because that's how journalism happens. And so the idea that you can push them off that way, and that teams have gotten so powerful that they've been able to get away with that, I think it's a bad sign for, not media, but I think it's a bad sign for the teams in the future.
All right, well, I think that is a good way to end. Thank you so much for joining us, Will.
Oh, please, my pleasure. Thanks for letting me come around here. This was a really cool thing to get to do.
Definitely. All right, we'll be right back for more Rollin Illini on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. What kind of song was that?
Whoa, hey, watch that.
I'm just kidding, and we were dancing in the studio. Welcome back to Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. Now, that was a great interview with Will Leitch. We had a lot of fun But Will, what did you think? I know you're a big Will Leitch fan.
Oh, it was an awesome experience to get to interact with him. I mean, he's kind of a household name, at least in my household growing up. So just kind of having that interaction with him face to face was really cool. And I also really enjoyed seeing Dres for the first time. I'm looking forward to our future visits there because I thought it was real beneficial just to walk around and kind of interact with a few people and just kind of, get a feel for what the athletes do on a daily basis. I know you're there lifting all the time, so it was just an everyday thing for you.
Yeah, I'm in there every now and then. But yeah, we took Will Leitch into the gym in Dres. It's just on the main level. It's where all of the para-athletes train, from Tatiana McFadden to Kane Walters.
Right now, they're out there helping out with parking for the football game.
Yes, they are, yeah. Some of the athletes sign up to help people park in the Dres parking lot for a few bucks, of course. And then
it's a good spot to park, just around the corner from the stadium.
Yeah, definitely. It is a good spot. And then in addition to taking Will Leitch to the gym, we went downstairs to the official Paralympic training facility. It was fun. Nobody there, but it's always eye-opening to get in front of the facility and see like 20 chairs just sitting all together, like a racing chair parking lot.
One thing I thought was interesting too was when Will actually looked at a wall and it had all the Paralympians up there and kind of their accomplishments through the years. And I remember him saying something along the lines of, "Wow, I was here at the university and I did not recognize this at all. Like I did not report on this story."
Oh yes, yeah, that is kind of the case for a good amount of people, but I think we're doing a nice thing here.
And I think that the coverage for para-athletics has really improved since he was here at the university back in
definitely.
1997.
I agree, and one thing Will Leitch brought up was a connection between the DIA and wheelchair basketball, per se. Now, if you look at Southwestern Minnesota State University, you'll see on their official athletics page a little tab for wheelchair basketball. You don't see that for Illinois. Well, for many reasons. I mean, the big thing is from my perspective, is that wheelchair basketball is not associated with the NCAA, so therefore it's not considered a D1 sport like the able-bodied basketball team is. And there are many reasons for that. A few being, well, mainly money, of course, and attendance. There's a significant difference between the amount of people who follow wheelchair basketball as compared to
major revenue sport like men's basketball here.
Yeah, men's basketball, or even like men's golf and women's golf. Not saying they don't have any followers, but I think their rate is different as compared to like able-bodied basketball. And another thing for wheelchair basketball is just the participation. There is not a wheelchair basketball team in every Division I school in the country. It'd be great if there was. I think it would be awesome. But there's probably around a dozen. And that's just kind of the reality. And they're not all in like the Big Ten or in D1. Like SMSU, as I mentioned, is not in D1, I believe.
There's certainly a lot of logistics that go into planning and starting those programs.
Yeah, and Whitewater's not in D1. But yes, there are a lot of logistics, and I know that has been a big push for the National Wheelchair Basketball Association to find a way to kind of overlap with the NCAA and make it kind of a stronger bond. And I do like the bond between, just in a broader picture, between the Paralympics and the Olympics. I think that's very similar. They work together. They're not the same thing, though they work very close together in pursuing the Olympics and Paralympics. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with Will Leitch. He can talk fast.
Oh yeah, he's a high energy guy.
He can fire away, but we had a lot of good laughs. Matt Bushy, the head coach of the men's wheelchair basketball team, joined us for a little bit, got on a mat and took us through some exercises. None that I did, or Will Leitch did, or you did, Will.
Mm-mm.
Maybe next time. We're missing out, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be participating in any workouts like James did this past week with Kane.
Yes, that's right. James Boyd is missing. James. I think he'll be here in our spirits, at least emotionally.
He's got, real important stuff for the AP right now, covering the football team.
Yeah.
We'll let it slide this week.
Yeah, this week, James, it's okay. But next week, sorry, but you gotta stay here. Or, if we just wave a magic wand, he'll appear in a few seconds with Craig Spence, the head of communications for the National Paralympic Committee. Welcome back into the One Line here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. Ryan Wilson here, joined by James Boyd, Will Gerard, and on the big screen today, we have Craig Spence from the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee. Craig is the head of the communications there. How are you doing, Craig?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am great. Well, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. You are in Bonn, Germany?
I am, yes.
All right, very cool. All right, so I guess the big news of the IPC is the LA 2028. Big news for the U.S. So now that it has been announced, what are the next steps from the Paralympic side?
Well, to be honest with you, it's uncharted waters for us because we've never had a games be awarded to a host city 11 years out. So we know what happens when a city usually wins the games and we work with them for 7 years, but suddenly to work with an organising committee for 11 years is totally new for us. Usually what happens is we do an orientation seminar with the organising committee where we introduce them to the Paralympic movement, our various functional areas, and we tell them the difference between organising Paralympic Games compared to an Olympic Games. So that's usually the starting point we have with organising committees. And then from there, we work on the mother of all Excel documents. It's probably like the biggest, what we call the master schedule. For someone who works in comms, it's the most unfriendly and boring document in the world. That gives you the landmarks and the steps that people need to take to organise a Paralympic Games. So we'll be altering the master schedule, ready to work with LA.
Yeah, so 11 years out, is the schedule pretty big already?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what we've got to do is we've got to ensure these games are right. I mean, the games in the US is huge for the Paralympic movement because it's probably the one big market around the world that we've yet to really break into. So it's a huge opportunity for us. We've got to maximise every single opportunity and maximise every single avenue that comes to us in order to ensure that the LA Games are a great success and that by the end of the Games, people are aware of US Paralympians and the abilities of the star athletes. That's what we've managed with previous Paralympic Games, and we hope to do the same with LA in 2028.
Nice. So I know you mentioned you're still trying to work on reaching the U.S. market, and I know the president of the IPC, Andrew Parsons, said the U.S. is still kind of developing in the Paralympic side. How does the U.S. compare to say, Germany?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people think automatically that the US will be a developed market, and it's not. I mean, I'd probably say the most developed market we have in terms of communications and awareness of Paralympic sport is Great Britain. And that's partly because they held a very successful Games there in 2012. And in Great Britain, when the Paralympics is on, it's front page news of pretty much every single newspaper. It's back page news, it's wall to wall on TV, it's leading the headlines on every single news bulletin. Paralympians are household names. I mean, there's a great statistic that before London 2012, less than 1% of the British population could name a Paralympian. Of the Paralympians they could name, they named Tanni Grey-Thompson, an athlete who retired in 2004. After the Games in 2012, 33%, so 1 in 3 of the British population, could name at least 5 Paralympians. And that provided a perfect foundation for us then to build through to Rio 2016. But one of the best steps forward that we've made in Great Britain, and is a model that we want to get around the world, is that when people and sports writers write about Paralympic sport in Great Britain, they don't focus on the disability. They don't focus on what doesn't work. They focus on what does work. So before London 2012, Johnny Peacock, who many many of your listeners and viewers might actually know, to his rivalry with the US athlete Richard Brown. Johnny, in every single article before London, was known as Johnny Peacock, an athlete who lost his leg due to meningitis, aged 5. No, didn't really mention the fact that he could run 100 metres in 10.6 seconds on one leg. Now, any article about Johnny Peacock in the UK never mentions his disability. It's all about his ability. So it's Johnny Peacock, 2-time Paralympic champion, is aiming to run even faster than 10.6 seconds. So he's covered in newspapers just like any other sports star in Great Britain. And that's what we've got to do now in the US. We've got to change it in the US. And the games in the US will help. It'll lead to more TV coverage, more media coverage. The games is a thing that you can't ignore. You can't just go, oh yeah. The Olympics is great and turn the back on the Paralympics. Society just won't allow it anymore. And we're really confident that the games in LA with 11 years build up will be fantastic for the Paralympic movement.
Nice. I do love the aspect from the IPC side of writing about these athletes and focusing on what they can do. And I do love that aspect when I'm looking in the parallel plane skiing for you guys. Yeah. But how do you guys inform journalists to say, hey, let's not focus on the disability side. Let's focus on what they're doing on the field.
It's something we don't force on media. We always say the best change happens through positive experiences. You can't force change on people. And what happens is the media will attend the Paralympic Games. They will see that the athletes we have amazing abilities. I always say when I speak at conferences, how many people in this room could run the 100 metres in 10.6 seconds? There's no one. And then I point out that we have athletes. You're shaking your head there. 10-7, 10-8.
No. More like 15.
Exactly. So we've got guys on one leg who run 100 metres in 10.6. And then I say, is there anyone in this room who can swim 50 metres freestyle in less than 30 seconds? And there's no one in the room. Yet we have swimmers with no arms who can do that. They can do it in 29 seconds. So what the Paralympic Games does is it gives you a positive experience. It really does showcase the abilities of the athletes. And because of that, you start to focus on the things that the athletes can do as opposed to what their bodies cannot do. And that positive experience changes the mindset. And that's what leads to this coverage. So going into London, in Great Britain, we had all this coverage where the attention was on the disability. Then people saw the sport, and afterwards, they focused on the abilities of the athletes. They never really gave the backstories of the athletes because they were like, well, what's the point of writing about a backstory? If I'm writing about a soccer player or a football player, I don't write about where he went to school or what his favourite food is. I focus on his amazing abilities as a soccer player, and that's what they've started to do with the same with Paralympic sport. And if we can replicate that model around the world, then we're going to make great things happen. However, we can only do it through positive experiences. I'd love to bring all the US media to Pyeongchang in March. I'd love to take all the US media to Tokyo in 2020 so we can get the ball rolling now. But I don't think that'll happen until Paris in 24, when a lot of US media will turn up and cover the Paralympics in the games before LA. And then in LA, we'll have hopefully a great turnout of US media, and that transition will happen. But sometimes it takes home games to make that switch.
You just mentioned the home games. Tatiana McFadden, obviously huge in the Paralympic world, but not as big here, even in the U.S. How big is it, do you think, just to have that star power driven, is, having the games in LA, but also having the star power from a person that's from your country?
I think it's huge. It's huge. I mean, you look at London again. I always use London as the model because it's the blueprint. But Hannah Cockcroft is a T34 wheelchair racer. She's now a household name. Everyone in Great Britain knows who Hannah Cockcroft is. 5 years ago, no one had a clue who Hannah Cockcroft was. They thought Johnny Peacock was a type of bird. They now know he's one of the world's fastest men in the world. So I think someone like Tatiana can draw people in to the Paralympic movement now, because there'll be more attention naturally on Paralympic sport in the US because the games are coming to LA. And Tatiana's, well, for me, I think she's one of the greatest athletes in the world, regardless of Paralympic sport. What she is capable of doing and dominating so many distances, and also trying to handle winter sport when she wants to effectively, I think is an absolute phenomenal. And I mean, it's quite funny, in our office, we have a wheelchair basketball. She was a former wheelchair basketballer, a gold medalist at London 2012, who's turned her hand at wheelchair racing. She's in T54 class, and this year she got to race Tatiana. And I said, "Oh, what was it like in your first race against her?" And she said, "I just sat there in the call room waiting to go out into the track, just thinking, there's no way I'm going to beat her. Just look at the body on her." And she's known as the Beast, and I think it's going to be people like Tatiana, people like Chelsea McClammer, who are going to really engage US audiences as we go through to LA. So, I mean, I'm not sure if Tatiana will still be around competing in LA. Who knows in 11 years' time. But
she plans on it.
If anyone can still be dominating in this world, it's probably her.
You mentioned that LA is a ways off in terms of if Tatiana will compete. Are there any younger names you see that you think could emerge as household names?
Do you know what? I think it's difficult to pick out an athlete now who's going to dominate in LA. And the reason being is, as the Paralympic movement's getting bigger, we're seeing more and more youngsters come in at the grassroots level.
Oh.
You look at London 2012 again. It was fantastic. It took Paralympic sport to a new profile. And if you take athletics, the following year in 2013 in Lyon at our Athletics World Championships, there was a whole generation of teenagers who were new to sport, who'd taken it up because of London 2012. And they're now the household names. And what you'll find is that there'll be a lot of US youngsters now who maybe don't even have a clue what Paralympic sport is. But they may get engaged in 2024 by the Paris Games. And then they may go, hey, this is me. If I can compete in a home games, maybe Paralympic sport is for me. And hopefully then they can get into the pathways and lead it through to a gold medal in LA in 2028. Who knows? I mean, Johnny Peacock, for example, gold medal in London in 2012, he was inspired by Beijing. And there's many athletes who are inspired by the games previous. I know in Brazil, there was a lot of Brazilian youngsters who were inspired after London 2012. The opportunity to compete in a home games is huge. So I think the stars of LA, we won't know until 2027, I'll be honest with you. And that's really exciting. That's really good, because you don't want to know who's going to win gold medals 11 years out. That's not particularly good sport. It's good if you're a betting man and you like to bet on sport, but come on.
So as a journalist, we talk a lot about media representation and kind of how we really need to represent how the world really is and the people in the world, whether it's disabilities, minorities, things like that. So how important do you think it is just for people with impairments or disabilities to see an athlete on TV or, you know, on just about every single channel doing something that they can see themselves doing?
I think it's important not just for people with an impairment to see other people with an impairment. It's important for everyone to see people with an impairment doing amazing things, because it totally changes perceptions. I've been in this job 7 years, and my mind is blown every single sporting event I go to. My jaw consistently drops to the floor going, wow, did I just see that? And it's vitally important. When I joined this job, I'd never heard of the Paralympics before. And I said, I can try change that, hopefully. And this movement consistently changes attitudes towards people with an impairment through sport. And that makes for a more inclusive society. Why should someone with an impairment be excluded from society? We see it around the world all the time. China is a great example. In 2008, before the Beijing Games, if you had an impairment in China, you were marginalized from society. Why? Because having a disability, I mean, disability is a very negative word. It means that you can't do something. And again, it focuses on what you can't do rather than what you can do. And what Parasport does, it puts the focus onto what you can do. And in China, because of the Paralympics, people with an impairment saw their education opportunities and their employment opportunities increase massively. as a result of the games. And it's not just like, you think China might be one of the worst countries in the world, but we did some research in 2016 in the US, and it said that 1 in 3 US employers would not employ someone with an impairment because they couldn't do the job as good as someone who was able-bodied. Now that's utter nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. And our former president, Sir Philip Craven, he's a wheelchair user, and he just said, what on earth is this perception, this myth in the world that people with an impairment can't do something? Yes, his legs don't work, but he's one of the greatest leaders I have ever worked with. I wear glasses, so I am technically a person with an impairment. Yeah, I'm not marginalised from society, so why should people who are in wheelchairs or are blind or cerebral palsy, why should they be marginalised? And that's the joy of Paralympic sport. It changes the public attitudes, not just for people with an impairment who can be inspired by seeing other people with an impairment doing sport, but the rest of society can go, wow, that's amazing. And then that inspires you to do other things as well. I mean, I always feel really lazy when I'm sat at Paralympic Games thinking, I really didn't want to go for a run today, or I didn't really want to go cycling. And then I see a man with one arm and one leg cycle past me. That's where I think, maybe I can actually do something to do about something. When you say you can't do something and you see someone do that, you go, yeah, okay, maybe I can.
One thing you mentioned is how there's a little bit more involvement with para-athletics at the grassroots level. What does the Paralympic Committee do to kind of encourage that participation?
Well, there's various ways in terms of grassroots support. So, yes, the IPC is the global governing body, but it's the responsibility of the national Paralympic committees and the sports to develop their sports around the world. Now, some nations obviously have more resources rather than others. So the US obviously is you could say, a very rich market where there's a lot of resources that can go into Paralympic sport. But if you take on the opposite side, there's a lot of African countries where there's no resources whatsoever. And Paralympic sport can be very expensive to get into compared to other sports. So if I played rugby as a kid, and for me to buy a pair of boots was £50. Yeah, if I'm a wheelchair user in Africa or someone with a leg amputee and I want to do athletics, then I either have to spend $5,000 on a racing chair or $2,500 on a running blade. And if you think of a youngster who's growing, a running blade at $2,500 is very expensive, bearing in mind in 1 year's time it won't fit them. So that's one of the challenges we face of really developing Paralympic sport around the world. So in 2012 we launched a foundation called the Agitos Foundation, and that has a sole purpose to develop Paralympic sport around the world, especially helping these nations in Africa and Latin America and Asia that struggle for resources, and the aim is to provide them with grants and the know-how to increase their own funding as well and develop Paralympic sport at the grassroots level. And we made some great progress in the first 5 years of the Agitos Foundation. I think we've reached something like 400,000 people in 125 countries, but there's so much more we can do. And that's the one thing, and the exciting thing about Paralympic sport. It's come a long way, I'd say, in the last 5 years, but there's so much more that we can do. I think we're only scratching the surface, and who knows what the Paralympic movement will look like in 11 years' time when we come to LA.
Oh man, I just love our conversation. It's great. But I think we'll have one more question, and I think, how has the Paralympics affected you personally since you started working for the IPC?
Oh my word, this is where I start to get emotional.
I do what I can.
I think it's a fact, it affected me massively. Absolutely, it's changed me totally as a person. I used to be a person who I'd judge someone the moment I saw them. And now when I look back on it, I'm embarrassed by it. Because until you get to know a person and see what they can do, then why should you judge them within the first 15 seconds? And I wouldn't say I had any negative perceptions of people with an impairment when I took this job. I've always been very neutral. But my, oh my, have I always blown away by when I see an athlete do parasport. Whether that's Tatiana McFadden absolutely beasting someone over 1,500 meters, or Daniel Diaz in the pool doing something remarkable. I just think, how on earth do you guys do it? Take Tatiana. She doesn't do 100 meters. She does 200 meters, 400 meters, 800, 15, 5,000, and then she does the marathon just for good measure. How on earth? If that was an Olympic athlete, they'd be knighted. They'd be on dollar bills by now. They would be the most well-known athlete in the world, because to do that, you don't wake up one morning and have an ability to do all those distances. That is through unbelievable dedication and training. So the Paralympics has completely transformed me as an individual. I'm now probably one of the world's biggest champions for what a person with an impairment can do, and that's, I think, what the Paralympics has done for me. It's completely transformed my outlook on life. I'm obsessed now slightly by Paralympic sport. Given me the choice of Paralympic sport or able-bodied sport, I'll always take Paralympic sport. It's a movement I've been in for 7 years, and it's a movement I want to be in for the rest of my life, because it's just, when you go to the Paralympic Games, there is a special, special feeling, which we call the Paralympic spirit, and the passion of the people comes from everywhere. Yes, the Paralympic Games, I've done 3 now, leave you completely exhausted, completely no energy. But the moment after the opening, after the closing ceremony, you want to go again. You want to do it again. You're just like, I can't wait for the next games. And yeah, I'm a bit sick at the moment, laying low with flu, but I can't wait to get back into the office on Monday and get going.
All right, well, this has been a lovely conversation. We'll be right back from more Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 and UPTV. Thanks so much, Craig.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Man, I really love that conversation with Craig. He's such a great guy.
There's so much to digest. I feel like we could talk about that interview for almost an entire show.
Yeah, I think we could, and there was a 5 to 7 minute stretch in that interview in which I just couldn't stop smiling. I was amazed by everything Craig was saying. He's a great guy, of course.
He's certainly passionate about what he does for the Paralympic Committee.
Yes, definitely. I mean, before I started working at the IPC, I was a big fan of wheelchair basketball and wheelchair track. But when I get involved with all these people who are stationed in Bonn, Germany, and work in the headquarters, it's like, wow, these people are really into it, and that kind of translated into like myself being like, okay, I'm really into para-alpine skiing now, or wheelchair track, or wheelchair basketball. And one thing Craig mentioned, one of many things, was that he mentioned how he tries to get to know people on a personal level. You know, and permanent side, once you get to know somebody, it's kind of a different story, and that's something I really kind of treasure on a personal level, because I mean, there are multiple reasons why I don't do sports journalism now. What? Because I want to do the longer stuff. I want to get to know somebody, and I think there's a lot of power in that, a lot of power in connecting with somebody on a personal level. And it's interesting. I'm taking a class called Death and Dying. Very enlightening. The book is called Death and Dying, Life and Living, which the latter part is correct. Anyways, because I'm still living. I'm still alive. In our last class, we had to write down 16 things that mattered the most to us. 4 of those things were the people. 4 people that mattered the most to us. And so then the guest speaker read off a list, and slowly in the story you were dying. So she would say a sentence, and then she would be like, okay, cross something off your list. And for almost everybody, the last 4 things to cross off our list were the people. So I think we can do all these big things, win a lot of awards, but I don't think it really matches what we do with people and how we connect with them, and vice versa.
And para-athletics certainly serve as a great platform for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that's one thing I like about the IPC, and even to kind of go back to what Will Leitch said, wheelchair basketball and wheelchair track is very open and transparent here. I know, as I mentioned last semester, talking with Kate Rougeau, I said one time in our office, I'm going to help you guys out. How can I do that? And we talked about journalism. So yeah, I think it's very lovely that they're so open, and I think it's great that they know what they need, and that's kind of media. And I think we're doing a great job here.
It was hard, like, not to get a little worked up during that interview with Craig when he was talking about some of his preconceived notions he had before working with the IPC and just how much has, like, changed him as a human being, and he truly loves his job.
I think so. Yeah, when I interviewed for the IPC, it was right after Rio, and I'm like, hey, you guys have fun in Rio? Yeah, we were exhausted. We had a great time. So they really love their job. And so, yeah, I know when I first got here, and I remember the first time I saw Tatiana McFadden, I was inside the trash gym, and I had a feeling like what Tatiana looked like, and I was just sitting there seeing this really buff individual.
A little awestruck by the beast.
Yeah, I was like, I think that's Tatiana McFadden. Like, oh my gosh. Need her autograph. And we have it on the wall. But it was quite amazing. And for you, Will, to see wheelchair basketball and wheelchair track, what has kind of come to mind for you?
Similar to what Craig was saying, I feel like it kind of has changed my perception of how I interact with people who have disabilities. But even like just seeing some of these incredible accomplishments, it blows me away every time. I know one thing Craig mentioned during his interview was how whenever he speaks in front of a bunch of journalists and he's trying to teach them how to, well, I don't know if he's trying to teach them, but when he talks about covering para-athletics, he says, can anyone in here run 100 meters in 10 seconds?
Nope.
Can anyone, I'm not sure what the mark was for swimming, but it was under 30 seconds for, and in that same way, I kind of, it makes me really appreciate what these athletes are doing. And we've now twice gone to practice at the stadium where the basketball team is going up and down the ramps, and I just can't help but be impressed by the fact that they don't take breaks.
I'm impressed.
They just go up and down and go back to sprinting. Like there's really no rest for them in that hour period, and it's amazing.
It is amazing.
And I'm really looking forward to next week when I think the softball team is supposed to make an appearance, and they're going to be running ramps alongside the team.
Softball versus wheelchair track. Who will win? Find out next week on our show. We'll be there. But yeah, I think it's been an interesting experience for the wheelchair basketball teams here and the wheelchair track teams here to kind of grow and get used to more media coverage, because we always hear about different outlets doing documentaries on Tatiana or on Amanda McCrory or whomever. So I think as the sport grows, so does the media, kind of.
I think I can speak for both you and James in saying that, like, we really do appreciate the opportunity to cover these athletes and just the people we've met so far this year. It's been awesome. I mean, we had Tatiana McFadden in the studio.
What?
I mean, talking to Craig, someone who's so high up with the Paralympic Committee. It seems like each week we're diving even deeper into into these sports and the athletes. And I'm really looking forward to what awaits with basketball. And I know we have the Chicago Marathon next week, and we didn't even talk about it all today.
Oh, man, not enough time. We need like 2 hours here. Oh, man, yeah, we have Illinois football coming up. But yeah, next week we have the Chicago Marathon. We'll have a good conversation about that for sure. James Boyd will be back in action. Had a lot of fun with him. He's been doing some workouts with Kane Walters.
So keep an eye out for that content coming your way.
Yes. As Will and I mentioned before the show, Kane may not be here, but he's always on the show.
He's always on the show in
always
spirit.
On the show. I saw him earlier today.
Who knows? Maybe he'll be here next week, too.
Who knows? To be continued. So we're going to sign off here. For Will Gerard, James Boyd, we need you back in here. Andrew with UPTV, Will Leitch, He'll be on that. It's Craig Spence. I'm Ryan Wilson. Thanks for listening to Rollin Illini here on WPGU 107.1 on UPTV. Now for some Illinois football.